Hi, welcome to Privacy Chats with Rachel and John.
What are we talking about today, John?
So today's episode, I think, is an interesting one. I got this idea from talking to a friend of mine who had some concerns about something in his house. So we're going to title this episode, "Is My Refrigerator Spying on Me?" So,
Dun, dun. Sorry,
dun, dun, dun.
put music
And
to it.
we're doing this, if anyone has watched any of other episodes that we've published, this one's a little bit different. That of the two of us, I'm the only one who has gone deeper into this and done some research. So I guess we're going to do a slightly different style, and Rachel's kind of going to interview me for this one. So
Absolutely. And to preface, I don't have a smart refrigerator, but I have family members that do. I've not had the personal need to dive into it from a consumer perspective myself, but let's just pretend I am. Is my refrigerator spying on me?
that's a great question. So I think the answer really kind of, I'm going to say it depends. And when I started going into this, I was thinking about it from like really my perspective of what I know about these devices. And I had a conversation with my wife about it, and she's like, "Well, can all of the refrigerators spy on us?" And it's like the answer to that is no. So where it depends on if it's spying on you is really depending on if it can spy on you. So in order for it to get any content from you whatsoever, it needs to have like a camera, a microphone, some sort of a sensor. And most traditional refrigerators don't, but that's changing. So the if you have an old timey refrigerator, it probably doesn't have any cameras, or there you go. Mine is the same. Yeah. So it depends on whether or not it has the ability to.
And like when we say spying, what would a Samsung or a refrigerator manufacturing company want my information for?
So we shouldn't really use the term spying, because that's kind of a nefarious thing. And
Yeah.
to the most part, these sensors, so when I say sensors, we're mostly talking about microphones and cameras. They're not there for nefarious things, and I'm not going to, trying to make Samsung look like, bad guys or anything like that. I know, but they're not. I think they're trying to help us out with things that are good for us. I read a PC magazine article that was really interesting, and it talked about a refrigerator's ability to essentially inventory your refrigerator. So if you think about it, you can take your phone and go to like do a Google search thing, and you can take a picture. Like you can go outside and take a picture of a plant, and Google will tell me exactly what that plant is and all kinds of things about it. So it can just recognize things and know that. So you can apply that technology to a camera that's looking inward in a refrigerator, and it could identify what all of the different products are in your refrigerator. And then, I guess presumably keep some sort of a database, and it will know when you put the milk in, and that's going to go bad in the next week or so. So, there's some features like that. It can tell you when things are going to go bad. It might remind you, hey, it's time to buy new butter, or, conceivably, and I'm making some of this stuff up, but you're in the grocery store, and you could reach out somehow to your refrigerator and, know what you need. Or I think one of the things that they mentioned in the article was the ability for your refrigerator to make recommendations to you. I saw something else about connecting or about using your refrigerator kind of the same way you would use Alexa or Google Home, that you could say, "Hey, Samsung," and ask it questions. So it's internet connected. So it's really just a smart device that's connected to the internet. And I saw another thing when I was actually looking up answering a different question, but we're probably going to talk about. But one of the things that it can do is you can connect your phone to your refrigerator, so that when you get a phone call, you can answer it on your refrigerator, which seems interesting. I'm not sure why, because I would just
Maybe you have your
answer
phone
the
in your
phone.
pocket already. Yeah, it's
Right.
interesting to make redundancy on your phone in different applications in your house, but I imagine that's kind of the overarching design of a smart home with smart IoT devices connected, where I can do anything anywhere without needing that physical object, because I am in the home. I am in the smart device that can do any and everything with it. So this
Right.
refrigerator's seemingly one step to get to that vision. Now we talked about spying being kind of a misnomer, but having a camera, having a microphone in my fridge, what should I actually be worried about then, if it is for a good reason of helping me get the groceries I need when I need them?
So there are risks. If you have a device with a microphone, then the device can be recording conceivably everything that's said within the vicinity of it, and those conversations might be sensitive. There might be private conversation between you and your spouse or your children, and even if it's not information that other people would want to hear, you don't want your private conversations that are happening in your own home being out there for other people to hear. So that's some of the risk. And on top of that, there's conceivably somebody could take some of that information that they hear and I guess use it against you in some way. We're talking about, so there's also like the camera's possibility of recording something from the camera, or maybe even knowing that your house is empty for a period of time, you're on vacation, like there's no content coming from this device for a while, so this family must be out of town. I guess conceivably, and I haven't heard of this happening, but if somebody could through the internet reach out and gain control of devices in your home, like your refrigerator, and do something to ransom it, like we've heard about ransomware and stuff like that, and then charge you, like you're not going to be able to use your refrigerator unless you pay me $50. Right. So I don't.
Funny
That's
ransom.
It kind of is, which is why I don't think that's really likely.
Yeah, it's probably
but it's more
what it is too. If these companies are putting the proper control between, I guess, like what's leaving my device and entering their servers, it's a pretty basic, security measure to ensure that's close to impossible, or not in the reasonable realm of possibilities with the amount of resources required to exploit that. It sounds creepy at first. Now the use cases make it not less creepy, but you balance the risk against the reward, basically.
Yeah, so that's a good point. Is that like the manufacturer of the device is could be one of the, I don't want to even say nefarious, but one of the people that could have access to the data. Because the truth is that they do. If they're creating a platform to facilitate the ability for you to, like we said earlier, from your grocery store to reach out to your refrigerator to know if your milk is going to go sour in the next few days, then they have access to that information all the time because they're the intermediary of it. So they're one of the entities that you might be at risk from. Like the way you would protect yourself from them is just understanding what they have, what data that they have, and how they intend to use it, and that's in one of those, the privacy notice that nobody reads. But I will go on record here in this platform and say, maybe we should read those things, and I'll say we, so I'm not being accusatory. So the other possible, I guess we'll call them threat actors at this point, since we're moving beyond the manufacturer of the device. The likely possibilities are just like, there's just random people out there, and I don't even like to call them hackers, but they know a little bit about computers and how networks work.
They call it kitties, is what I've heard.
Yeah, that's one of the terms. That's and they're really just out there trying to have fun and figure out how many can I find these devices in other people's homes. And they're not advanced in their hacking abilities. The way to protect yourself against somebody like that is just having good, cybersecurity hygiene. And all I'm talking about there is having good passwords on your devices and stuff like that. There are, more advanced hackers looking for victims of opportunity. They're like, who knows what they're going to do? They might, record some of the content, see if they can do something to monetize it. But it would be a lot of work for them to get any money from somebody like that. Going beyond like the refrigerator, which this episode is about, really each of those things is just another computer on your home network. And while somebody might not be interested in your refrigerator, if they can take control of that computer and use that as a jumping point to get to something else in your home, like eventually they might get to something that really does have more value, like your laptop computer or something like that.
Yeah. Little leapfrog pads to get to the gold mine, basically.
Yeah. So you want to really protect all of the devices that you have in your home. And, not that like the most advanced threat actors in the cyber world are like, big hacker organizations that are sponsored by nation states, like, North Korea and China is often accused of having that. I don't consider myself to be
A target of those.
Right. Like I'm not a very interesting person. I don't have influence over a lot of things. I don't have a ton of money. I don't know about you, Rachel, but
I'm no billionaire. Let the secret be out.
so those are some of the examples of the threat actors that we might be looking at. And again, I hate to use that term because one of the examples was that, Samsung or whatever, the company themselves, and they're not a threat. They're just trying to, make good refrigerators for us.
Yeah.
So
get us to buy their products.
Yes.
Mission accomplished. Well, how would I know then if I maybe bought a more recent model and maybe it's been advertised? Let's just say I threw out the manual. I don't really know.
A couple of things. This was the question that, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he pointed out that his refrigerator has a little light that lights up to tell him that I think he was talking about a microphone, and he said that he always turns it off because he doesn't like that he's got a microphone that's just sitting there on in his kitchen, so he always turns it off. And he said every now and again I look at it and it's back on again, and he's like, why does it turn back on? And I don't know the answer. I haven't looked at his refrigerator. And I asked him, I suggested a couple of possibilities. Like, is the button to turn it on really close to the same button that you would push to, switch between, I don't know, shaved ice and crushed ice or something? And he didn't think that was causing it. Like, is it being pushed accidentally? And then I suggested, well, is it possible that the refrigerator defaults to the microphone being on, and maybe there was a power outage, which happens. He lives in the same neighborhood as me, and sometimes that happens for, it's usually just a blip. But like, if we have a power outage in the neighborhood and your refrigerator turns back on, does it just turn on defaulted to the microphone being on?
Yeah, it's like a hardware preset.
Yeah. He didn't think that was it. So I didn't have an answer to his question, but it caused me to start thinking about this conversation that we're having now. In the research, I found that there's a bill that's passing through the Senate and the House. It's called the Informing Consumers About Smart Devices Act. Bipartisan support. It's being sponsored by Senator Cantwell, a Democrat from Washington, and Senator Cruz, who's a Republican in Texas. It was initially being blocked by Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, Republican from Kentucky. Never been a huge fan of that guy, but it sounds like it's going through. So if that gets signed and put into law, it's going to require the FTC to, create some sort of a requirement that manufacturers of devices that have these like microphones and cameras and stuff like that, that they put a notice on the device so that when you buy it, this thing has a microphone. And I think it's
that's
intended.
Not already required.
Right. I know.
One of those no kidding. You might not know after a certain point when all of them seem to, and then they may vary in the degrees of.
I know. I feel
like your friend's fridge, how they turn on, how they don't turn on. I don't know. It's like you approach devices, expecting information, and if that's not pushed toward you too hard, you just assume, nothing to worry about here, nothing to see, which I can't say is the best mindset to have, but I'm speaking to the average consumer here.
I feel like if you buy a microwave, it has a warning to tell you not to put your cat into it.
Right.
I don't know that that's actually true, but some of the warnings that you get are like, really? And this one just seems like it makes sense. Like telling people that you're buying a device, that you're bringing a microphone or a camera or something into your home that could be used against you in some way. So yes, it seems like a reasonable thing. So from what I read, it seems like that is making its way through the process, and hopefully in the near future it will end up on the president's desk. And it'll still take a while, but something that I read suggested that by 2026, maybe new devices will have to have this warning.
Yeah.
But apart from that, just look for, generally they're going to have warning lights and indicators on them. I'm sure both of us, like I've got a camera right here that has a blue,
just like my apps do.
Right. So, generally there's going to be some sort of a visual indicator that there's a device on that's recording you. I don't know that that's required by law here. It's definitely required by law in some other, like in Europe, for example, and it probably is in some individual states, but it's not a federal law. So it really depends on where you are. But it's common for that to be true. There to be some sort of visual indicator that there's something recording you. So I would look for those.
Why don't you think companies are putting those warnings on, or notices on by default as good consumer protection initially? Like why? can't be that hard, just to have a 3-liner on a sticker and then be done with it,
Yeah, I love the question. I don't know the answer to it. But I would so much I would appreciate it, I think. But I wonder if they're just afraid that that's going to scare
It's
people
going to
away.
deter people right away. Like giving people that warning says, hey, you should be concerned about this subconsciously, or there is a risk here. There's something to look out for. And I can understand if you hadn't thought about it before, and that's the first warning you see before exploring the settings, exploring like why, like exactly what we're talking about, why they need video, a camera in there, why they need sound sensors. If you only thought about the warning first and not the other whys, I think it's perhaps easier to go off in this land of, oh, yep, someone is on the other end just sitting at a desk looking at me when I open my fridge, and going worst case scenario route rather than maybe a more logical and thought through. Of course, not being the refrigerator manufacturer, we're not thinking about this first, but maybe they just want to warn me when my milk is low, or suggest times when I can go to the store next, or answer my phone even if I'm away from it from 2 rooms.
Well, they're gonna. I mean, definitely. I think from let's put our marketing manager hats on here for a second, and pretend to be one. They're probably going to focus on all of the wonderful things that you can get from this new technology, right? So it's all going to be rainbows and unicorns, and they're not going to want to point out that there could be like a dark secret underbelly nefarious part of it. So I think that's my answer to your question. They want the product to sound wonderful.
Would you say it's worth it if I were in the market for a new fridge to buy one for the features?
Yeah, so I hate to give you a wishy-washy it depends Rachel, but it really does. It's because I don't know what your tolerance, like risk tolerance, is something that you and I deal with in our industry all the time. So you have to weigh the risk against the benefit to you. So do I really want to be able to connect my refrigerator so I can answer the phone call in the kitchen without picking up my phone? Or like, do I want this new feature that I can have the inventory in my refrigerator, whatever those features are? And in the work that we do, risk management is the likelihood of something bad happening multiplied by what's the impact if that thing does happen. So you have to measure it somewhat yourself. Like, I'm taking on a risk here, but is that risk worth the additional benefit that I'm going to get from it? So I would say this: if you're buying a refrigerator and all you wanted to do is keep your food cold, and you're not going to use it as a telephone, you're not going to have an inventory, anything for you, then you're taking on additional risk and getting no benefit because you're not using those features. So, maybe you don't need to spend the extra money for those features, or if you really like how that refrigerator looks, then, maybe figure out how to disable the features in some way. Are you going to value the extra features that you're going to get compared to the extra risk that you're taking on?
Right. And I think with more, I totally agree, and I'm reflecting on other devices that are also connected to the internet that are used for home improvement, and I know that we've learned, at least with consumer devices like Siri and Alexa, like there's definitely a possibility for monitoring to be going around.
To be real about it, though, there's very few of us that aren't walking around with a phone in our pocket, right? So we're already somewhat familiar with that risk, and we've all heard the stories, and everyone suspects that Apple and different social media companies are listening to what's happening on your phone. And then like people talk about, I was having a conversation with somebody about skateboards, and all of a sudden I'm seeing advertisements for skateboards on my phone. So people have that expectation that those things are happening, and guess what? There's very few people are just saying, well, forget it, I'm not using a phone anymore.
Yes.
So we've all kind of done that risk reward measurement and chosen, okay, I'm going to take on the risk because I really like having the features and the convenience that are afforded to me by having a phone in my pocket. So
yeah, and there's the question of, do you know before it's too late to make that decision? And I think the more obscure the devices become, the more important it is to put the information out there first, that it is, again, also a smart device that, there is recording and video going on. Because with phones, we've learned, and it's not wildly unexpected now when an app asks you for microphone and camera access. But it's hopefully, companies being proactive rather than reactive with how they choose to communicate what's going on, as opposed to, after the fact, which, again, I'll repeat, phones, not super surprising. Things like my refrigerator or my microwave, maybe a bit more. So I need it, that notice to be way more clear than something I might expect to see as a pop-up on a new app that I download.
Right. But hence this episode. Like we talked about it and thought that this actually might be something that people might be interested in, because if people don't know, is my refrigerator spying on me? I don't know.
Yep, absolutely. What else do we have to talk about here? We talked about who we're at risk from. What can I do with it? What would you recommend I do with this information? If I am or am not in the market for a new refrigerator.
Yeah. So in the work that we do in the privacy industry, there's, we often talk about things like, purpose limitation and use limitation and stuff like that. So I would say to apply that, and really what that means is, translating that into this use case, is only have these devices or for features that you want to use them for. So, going back to like I said, if you only want the refrigerator to keep your food cold, then don't have these extra sensors, microphones, cameras, whatever sensors on them, or turn them off if they do. Like I pointed out, the visual indicators. So keep an eye on those. Like, is the microphone on, and do you want it to be on? And if you don't want it to be on for something that you're using it for, turn it off. There's another thing. This one's going to go deeper. I'm almost scared to make this recommendation, but anyway, like I said earlier, a refrigerator that has these capabilities is essentially a tiny computer. And like all computers, it's got some software that tells it how to run. On devices like that, it's generally referred to as firmware. Well, this is the part that's going to go too deep, over the course of time, there's little weaknesses and vulnerabilities can be discovered by, hackers and people in the, that community, doing research, and they can find weaknesses in the code that can be, leveraged against people. Generally, when that happens, the manufacturers of the devices will issue updates to their software to, fix that vulnerability. So the way you would apply that new software is called updating the firmware. And if you look at your refrigerator and go into the settings somewhere, you can just update that, and it can tell. There might even be a setting to tell it to automatically update when a new version comes out. If that's available to you, please turn it on.
Yeah, there's no reason why I don't think you should, because if anything, having it manual means that you have to wait until you figure it out, which, the world doesn't wait for you to push a software update. Like, it'll be available, but you'll still be in the old version with a recognized vulnerability until you manually update it yourself.
Yeah. So, however, like if you're one of those people that has reminders for, I don't know, changing the air filter in your furnace, or, you're supposed to change the batteries in your smoke detectors, although they make them batteryless now, don't they? Whatever. If you've got those routine reminders to do anything, or like, changing your clocks back and forth although we're trying to get rid of that too. But anyway, have some sort of reminder to check and update the firmware. So that's one of them. Having a good password, and this is, across everything that you have, you should have good passwords. They should be different from each other. They should be long. And I know that people are going to hate me for saying that. Because of how passwords work, length is the key thing to a password. So the complexity doesn't even buy you a whole lot. Mathematically, you don't get a whole lot of extra benefit.
Yeah, it's a way bigger gain if you can just make it longer first, and then
make it longer. Just don't make it longer by making it like a recognizable word. Right. So if you're using dictionary words, that's not really good, because they're easy to find in what's called a brute force attack. Anyway, good passwords. If you have the same password on everything, you're not doing yourself any favors. I'll just say that. I did find when I was reading for getting ready for this episode, a different PC Magazine article. And it talked about, and I don't know if it was just a specific brand of a Samsung refrigerator, but it said that the password was kind of built into the device. It was different for each device, but the password is essentially the last 4 digits of your Wi-Fi network in your home. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a
And now
really,
that's
really
the
bad
default
password.
password that it comes with, and so the user has to change it in order to create their own, or is
No,
that the
I
stock
think
password
that,
across the board and you can't change it?
well, the fact that it says that, I don't know. I didn't research to see if you could change it from that.
Mhm.
But just overall, like the fact that I could Google that and find out, hey, the default password for most people's refrigerators is the last 4 digits of their home network, like
Even
the
if it
name of
is a
their
default
Wi-Fi.
password, a lot of people that are, I'm lazy in some areas too. Like that just
Sure,
they don't think it's
I'm
important.
not going
Like
to change it. Yeah. Well, password hygiene is good. The other thing you mentioned about or the question that you asked is, why don't they just give you a warning anyway? So I'll go to product reviews. So I would like to think that if companies are selling products that have bad privacy, cybersecurity features, it's really up to you and me and all of our cohorts that we work with to provide that information in reviews.
Mhm.
So let's make that commitment. And if you read reviews and people are saying like, oh, this is a terrible cybersecurity settings or something like that, then maybe avoid it. So
Mhm.
look
So
at
if you have the
product
knowledge at
reviews.
hand, vote with your money. But if you learn after the fact, pay it forward and tell others about your
Yeah,
findings and concerns.
right. And now, if you're going to be an activist about this, I'll jump on my soapbox and say, in this country, we don't have a comprehensive privacy law. There's like kind of a patchwork of ones in different states. I think we need one.
Mhm.
So if you're talking to your representatives, then tell them John said that we need a privacy law. They might not understand what that means, but I believe John, so do it. So yes, jump on my
Yeah,
bandwagon with
power in
me.
numbers.
Exactly. And last of all, if in privacy and cybersecurity, use your spidey sense. If something seems off to you a little bit, like my friend who said my microphone light is back on and it shouldn't be, then something's wrong. So trust your spidey sense, and if something seems wrong, it probably is. So follow up on that.
Nice. Well, I learned a lot, maybe not being in the refrigerator market again, but for what I
Okay.
am, and I might, need those features that are telling me when I need more milk or I need to get more produce because I'm low, or there's a wild flash sale going on at the Fry's next door to me, and I should
Right.
run because it's a big bulk deal and I've been overpaying in my last purchases. I'll go ahead and do that, knowing the risks that I must account for if
Well,
they
you'll
materialize.
be making an informed choice, Rachel, and that's exactly the way you should be approaching it. Yes.
Knowledge is power. Excellent.
Knowledge is power. Yes. So that's it. I hope we didn't scare anyone, because I love the new features that they're coming out with. I don't think I intend to use my refrigerator as a phone, but if it can inventory my stuff and tell me when my milk is going bad, sure.
One less thing your
So
brain has to do.
that's right. Yes, because it gets smaller every day, it feels like. Um, so yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for the chat.
Excellent. Well, until next time, bye everyone.
Bye.